outrageous accusations leveled against Planned Parenthood based on heavily doctored videos are offensive and categorically untrue.
Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards testifying before Congress about undercover videos that have led to questions about the alleged selling of body parts from aborted fetuses. In the first half of this program, we spent our time talking with Susanna DeBaca. She's the president of Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. We're now joined by Jennifer Bowen with Iowa Right to Life. And first of all, thank you very much for being here. And our first question right out of the chute, why should you or anyone else have the right to tell a woman what she should or should not do with what's going on in her own body?
It's a great question, and it's obviously a question that we get asked a lot in an organization like Iowa Right to Life. And the answer is pretty simple. We are talking about the bodies of two people. We're talking certainly about a woman who's experiencing something that she may or may not have planned for. And we're also talking about the life of a growing baby inside of her. And so we're talking about her absolutely, but we're also talking about that baby as well. That baby's heart started beating 18 days after conception. So we're talking about two people, not just one.
Okay, and back to the main issue at hand here. What do you think of the videos that everybody is talking about these days?
Well, I think what the videos have done a great job of is they've showed us exactly what we as in the pro-life movement, we knew that things like this, the trafficking of baby parts, was happening even in the 1990s. We knew that because we'd seen price sheets and things like that coming out, but what we did not have was these videos that have come out over the course of this summer. And what these videos show is obviously the underbelly of the abortion industry, which is what happens to those baby parts afterward. And so, you know, for us it's been a good opportunity to educate Iowans on, you know, you support abortion, and I understand that, but now the conversation's changed a bit, and we're not just talking about a woman's right to choose, or we're not just talking about abortion. Now we're talking about what's happening in those petri dishes, what parts are in those petri dishes, and now the conversation has changed, and those videos have been a great opportunity for us to have enlightening conversations across the state.
And it has changed the conversation, it certainly has, but Planned Parenthood says that they only charge for the processing and shipping involved in the transferring of that fetal tissue you just spoke about, which is perfectly legal. Is there really enough evidence in the videos to show that they are acting in an unprofessional way or with irresponsibility?
Well, I think the answer is twofold. First of all, it's a great thing that Congress, and even again this week we're seeing hearings going on just this past week of congressional hearings getting to the bottom of this. You know, it's one thing to say that's what they're doing, and it's another to put that up against videos like the one doctor, I think Mary Gatter is her name, saying I want to get the best price for these parts so that I can buy a Lamborghini. So it's one thing for them to be able to say that, but what's great about Congress going in and doing these investigations is they're going to get to the bottom of that and see if that's really true.
Okay, now fetal tissue research has been going on in the United States since the 1930s. It's currently being used to help find cures for spinal cord injuries, AIDS, Parkinson's disease, muscular dystrophy, macular degeneration. It has already led to the development of vaccines for rubella and measles. In fact, the 1954 Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded for work done with fetal tissue that led to the polio vaccine. In short, this research has saved countless lives. Isn't this use of fetal tissue better than just throwing it away or incinerating it?
Absolutely not. The answer is absolutely not. I'm not discounting the lives that they're saying have been saved because of research over the years, but it really goes to who we are as a nation and who we are, and when we're looking at developing unborn children in the womb, 18 days after conception, that heart's beating, everything is in place at 8 weeks. When we're talking about doing that on the backs of our unborn children, 58 million of them across the country since 1973, 16 aborted babies every single day in Iowa by Planned Parenthood of the Heartland alone. When we're talking about doing that research on the backs of dead babies, that is not acceptable. That speaks to the heart of who we are or who we are not as a nation.
Okay, now women can choose whether or not to provide the fetal tissue, and it is their choice, so what's the problem if it's their choice?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because one of the videos, and I don't remember exactly what number, but one of the videos played that out very clearly, that more often than not, these women are not making an informed choice. These women are not provided the opportunity to know that the abortion procedure is going to be changed and potentially more dangerous to the woman, because they can procure those parts because somebody bought that baby earlier on the website. And so that is, it's just not right.
Okay. And there are also federal regulations in place that, just speaking to your point there, that show that these folks cannot influence a patient's decision on this one way or the other. You dispute that?
I do dispute that, and I dispute that because the videos dispute that. There's testimony, and there's compelling testimony, and again, I apologize for not knowing the exact number of video it was, but there's compelling video in that where the woman talks about how she went in, she could not get the woman's consent on this particular baby that they needed the parts for, and she came out and she's like, "I'm sorry, I can't do it." Another staffer went in and came out with the forms a few moments later, and she said, "Well, how did you do that? How did you convince the woman to agree to that?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't. I just did it. I just approved it for her." You know, so there, I think that I think that these hearings and the investigations that are going on statewide and nationally will get to the bottom of those answers, and you will find that it's not just a pro-life community that's making assertions. There are disturbing things that play out in every single one of those videos that we have to, as a nation that has any character, we have to get the answers.
Okay, Julie, thank you very much. We will be back with more from Julie Bowen right after this.